India's financial market is facing a crisis of credibility. The Adani Group, once a symbol of India's economic prowess, is now embroiled in scandal. The Hindenburg report, released earlier this year, exposed serious allegations of fraud and stock manipulation within the conglomerate. This has sent shockwaves through the Indian economy and raised serious questions about the country's regulatory framework. The Adani Group, led by billionaire Gautam Adani, has close ties to the Indian government. This has led to concerns about crony capitalism and a lack of transparency in the Indian market. The government's silence in the wake of the scandal has only amplified these fears. The situation is reminiscent of the subprime mortgage crisis in the United States. Back then, a lack of regulatory oversight and a culture of complacency allowed a financial bubble to grow unchecked. When the bubble burst, the consequences were disastrous. India cannot afford to make the same mistakes. The Adani scandal is a wake-up call. It is time for the Indian government to take decisive action to restore confidence in the country's financial system. The Hindenburg report was like a grenade tossed into India's financial system. It detonated with explosive allegations at the Adani Group. The report accused the Adani Group of a brazen stock manipulation scheme. They alleged the use of offshore shell companies to inflate stock prices. The report sent shockwaves through the Indian stock market. Adani Group companies lost billions in market value. It also highlighted weaknesses in India's regulatory system. In the immediate aftermath of the Hindenburg report, an eerie silence emanated from the Indian government. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, usually a vocal figure on economic matters, remained conspicuously quiet. This silence, deafening in its own right, only served to fuel further speculation and erode trust. The lack of a swift and decisive response from the government was baffling to many. The allegations against the Adani Group were serious and had the potential to damage India's reputation in the global market. A prompt and thorough investigation should have been a top priority. Instead, the government seemed content to downplay the issue. Some government officials even went so far as to dismiss the Hindenburg report as a foreign conspiracy aimed at undermining India's economic rise. This denial of reality only deepened the sense of unease among investors. The government's silence spoke volumes. It suggested that the authorities were either unwilling or unable to address the serious allegations of crony capitalism and regulatory failure. This lack of accountability did little to inspire confidence in India's financial system. The Securities and Exchange Board of India, or SEBI, India's market regulator, found itself thrust into the spotlight after the Hindenburg report. SEBI is tasked with ensuring fairness and transparency in the Indian stock market. However, the Adani scandal raised serious questions about the regulator's effectiveness. Critics pointed out that SEBI had been slow to react to the allegations against the Adani Group. This inaction led some to question whether SEBI was truly committed to its mission of protecting investors. Furthermore, SEBI's investigation into the Adani Group was shrouded in secrecy. This lack of transparency did little to assuage concerns about potential conflicts of interest. The Adani scandal exposed a fundamental flaw in the Indian regulatory system. Section 5 Whistleblower Allegations. The Adani scandal took an even more intriguing turn when a whistleblower came forward with explosive allegations against SEBI itself. The whistleblower, a former SEBI official, claimed that the regulator had been deliberately lax in its oversight of the Adani Group. According to the whistleblower, SEBI had ignored multiple red flags about the Adani Group's activities. They alleged that the regulator had been pressured by high-ranking government officials to go easy on the conglomerate. These allegations, if true, painted a picture of a regulatory system compromised by political interference. The whistleblower's claims, contained in a detailed document leaked to the press, sent shockwaves through the Indian financial system. They suggested that the rot within India's regulatory framework ran much deeper than initially thought. The whistleblower's allegations were never independently verified. However, they added fuel to the fire of public outrage over the Adani scandal. The public demanded answers. They wanted to know how such a massive alleged fraud could have taken place under SEBI's watch. Section 6: Global Repercussions. The Adani scandal was not just an Indian story, it had global repercussions. Foreign investors, once bullish on India's growth prospects, began to have second thoughts. The allegations of fraud and regulatory failure raised serious concerns about the stability and transparency of the Indian market. International rating agencies, which provide assessments of a country's creditworthiness, took notice. Some agencies downgraded India's credit outlook, citing concerns about the Adani scandal and its potential impact on the country's economic growth. The scandal also damaged India's reputation as a reliable investment destination. Foreign investors, once eager to pour money into India's booming economy, became more cautious. They began to demand a higher risk premium for investing in India, reflecting the perceived increase in political and regulatory risk. The Adani scandal served as a stark reminder that in today's interconnected global economy, a crisis in one country can quickly spread to others. The fallout from the scandal had the potential to damage not only India's economy but also the global financial system as a whole. SEBI's inadequate response. SEBI finally broke its silence on the Adani scandal. The response did little to quell concerns. SEBI's statements were vague and non-committal, promised a thorough investigation but no details. This lack of transparency fueled speculation. Critics argued SEBI was protecting the government. SEBI's credibility continued to erode. Section 8: Conflict of interest at the top. Adding another layer of complexity to the Adani scandal was the issue of conflict of interest. The wife of SEBI's chairperson, Madhabi Puri Buk, was a former employee of the Adani Group. This revelation raised serious questions about Buk's ability to remain impartial in the investigation. Despite calls for her recusal, Buk refused to step down from her position. She insisted that she could remain objective and that her husband's previous employment with the Adani Group would have no bearing on the investigation. However, Buk's refusal to recuse herself further eroded public trust in SEBI. It reinforced the perception that the regulator was more interested in protecting its own interests and those of the government than in ensuring a fair and impartial investigation. The conflict of interest issue highlighted a systemic problem within India's regulatory framework. The lines between the government, regulators, and the private sector were often blurred. This lack of clear separation of powers created an environment ripe for corruption and abuse. Section 9: Discrediting the truth. As international scrutiny on the Adani scandal intensified, the Indian government went on the offensive. Instead of addressing the allegations of fraud and regulatory failure, the government resorted to discrediting the Hindenburg report and attacking the motives of the short-selling firm. Government officials accused Hindenburg Research of being part of a foreign conspiracy to undermine India's economic rise. They claimed that the report was nothing more than a malicious attempt to profit from shorting Adani Group stocks. The government's attempts to discredit the Hindenburg report were widely seen as an attempt to deflect attention from the real issues at hand. By resorting to nationalism and conspiracy theories, the government hoped to rally public support and silence its critics. However, the government's strategy backfired. The more the government tried to downplay the scandal, the more suspicious the public became. The government's defensive posture only served to confirm the perception that it had something to hide. Section 10: The need for transparency. The Adani scandal exposed the urgent need for greater transparency and accountability in India's financial system. The scandal showed how a lack of regulatory oversight and a culture of impunity could allow corporate malpractice to flourish. To restore confidence in the Indian market, the government needs to take decisive action. This includes strengthening SEBI's powers and resources, ensuring the regulator's independence from political interference, and fostering a culture of transparency and accountability within the corporate sector. The Adani scandal is a wake-up call for India. It is a reminder that economic growth without strong institutions and the rule of law is unsustainable. The government needs to act now to address the systemic weaknesses that allowed this crisis to occur. The future of India's economy depends on it.